Deep in the heart of Central America, there is a land of, well, just breathtaking beauty and really profound sorrow. It's a place where ancient civilizations seem to whisper from jungle-shrouded stones, and where a modern nation is still struggling to heal its deepest wounds. This is the story of Guatemala. Long before it was ever drawn on a map, the Nahuatl people gave this land a name that really captured its soul: Cuauhtemalan, the place of many trees. A name that speaks to a history rooted deep in the earth itself. And believe me, that name is no exaggeration. This is a landscape of extremes, a nation literally forged between volcanic fire and the immense, life-giving power of water. 37. That's how many volcanoes dot the highlands here. It's a constant, powerful reminder of the Earth's creative and destructive force. 4 of them are still active today, breathing smoke and shaping the lives of everyone living in their shadow. And on the other side of all that fire, you have this incredible ocean of green. The Maya Biosphere Reserve alone protects over 2 million hectares of forest. And this isn't just any forest. We're talking about the second largest in all of Central America, a vital lung for the entire region. So long before the first Spanish ships ever dreamed of arriving, a civilization rose up from this very challenging environment. And, well, they mastered it. The echoes of the Maya, they still define this land today. The story of Mayan civilization is, it's just staggering. For thousands of years, they built these monumental cities. At their peak, during the Classic period, great city-states like Tikal were these incredible hubs of science and art and commerce. And then, something happened. It's a mystery. Around 980, the great cities were just abandoned. The leading theory now points to a series of catastrophic droughts that caused this once mighty civilization to collapse. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century wasn't just a conquest. It was a total collision of worlds. The conquistador Pedro de Alvarado brought guns and steel, sure, but the most devastating weapons he brought, you couldn't even see them. Diseases like smallpox just ripped through the indigenous population, forever changing the nation's destiny. And this history of conflict didn't end with the Spanish, not by a long shot. Independence in 1821 just started a new chapter of struggle, and that led right into a tumultuous 20th century, where really Guatemala was often at war with itself. The early 20th century was just dominated by a series of dictators. You had men like Manuel Estrada Cabrera, who basically opened the door to the United Fruit Company, and Jorge Ubico, a ruthless authoritarian who enforced these brutal labor laws and ruled with an absolute iron fist. But there was a flicker of hope. In 1944, a revolution kicked off a decade of real democracy and social reform. But in 1954, that experiment was tragically cut short. A military coup, backed by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, overthrew the democratically elected government. It installed a new dictatorship, and it set the stage for decades of unimaginable violence. What happened next was one of Latin America's longest and deadliest internal conflicts. For 36 years, a brutal civil war raged between the U.S.-backed state and various leftist rebel groups, and it tore the very fabric of the country apart. And the world only began to understand the human toll through voices like Rigoberta Menchú. Her powerful testimony earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 1992, specifically for her fight against the oppression of indigenous people, who are bearing the absolute brunt of the violence. The cost was, it's just unimaginable. An estimated 200,000 people were killed or disappeared during the war. Just let that number sink in for a moment. 200,000. After the peace accords in 1996, a UN-sponsored Truth Commission was set up to figure out who was responsible, and its findings were, well, they were unambiguous. 93% of human rights violations were committed by government forces, and 83% of the victims were indigenous Maya. The commission's final conclusion was that the state had committed acts of genocide. And yet, and this is what is so incredible, out of all of that darkness, a culture of unbelievable resilience endures. The story of Guatemala today is really a story of survival, a living, breathing mosaic built on all these complex layers of history. You can see this resilience so powerfully in the nation's many voices. So yeah, Spanish is the official language, but 21 distinct Mayan languages are still spoken today, along with other indigenous tongues like Xinca and Garifuna. Think about that. These aren't just dialects. They are completely unique languages, each one a worldview, each one a library of history and culture that somehow survived centuries of suppression. It's a living testament to an identity that just refused to be extinguished. You can hear this history in the sounds of the marimba, the national instrument, and you can actually taste it in the food. The entire national cuisine is built on this Mayan foundation of three sacred ingredients: maize, chilies, and black beans. Every single meal is an act of remembrance, a diet with a root stretching back millennia, connecting today all the way back to the first people who called this land home.
So that brings us to today. Guatemala's path forward is really defined by this constant negotiation between confronting a really painful past and fighting to build a more just future.
A huge turning point came in 2015. An investigation uncovered this massive corruption ring called La Línea, and it reached all the way to the highest levels of government. In response, a huge, peaceful citizen protest movement exploded under the hashtag #ResignNow. And you know what? It actually worked. The pressure forced the sitting president to resign. And that matters because it showed a whole new generation of Guatemalans that they could, in fact, hold power to account. And that fight is still going. In 2023, in what was a pretty stunning turn of events, the anti-corruption candidate Bernardo Arévalo won the presidency. And here's the amazing part. He's the son of Juan José Arévalo, the very president who started that brief democratic spring way back in 1944. For so many people, his victory feels like a potential break from the past, maybe even a return to that unfinished revolution. So, all of this leaves us with a final question. For a nation with such ancient roots and such recent, deep wounds, what will be the next thing to grow in Guatemala, the place of many trees?